Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Before we get started, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all the good stuff that, helps us grow the channel there. This week we got UFC Vegas 21. It's the return of Leon Edwards taking on Belal Muhammad. Here to the side, we got our results from last week, UFC 259. It was nice to finally get back on the winning side of things.
Yeah, we ended up coming out a little under 2.5 units positive. If it weren't for that DQ win of Aljamain Sterling, we would have had a pretty big night. Looking to keep the ball rolling with this one. We've got a pretty decent main event and definitely a good last three fights on this card.
For sure, man. Let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead. Let's get on business.
Yeah, we start off at welterweight with the Vanilla Gorilla Jason Witt, who's 18-6, taking on Matheus Semelsberger, who's 7-2. Jason Witt, he entered the UFC on that 2-day notice, taking on Takashi Sato, where he didn't really get a chance to prepare for that at all, and we saw it in his performance. Yeah. He got dropped almost immediately, and we didn't really know what to expect of Witt coming into his next fight against Cole Williams. I do remember us actually cashing on that, and Witt came out there and really proved a point, showed that his wrestling was levels above Williams, and Williams coming in at 5 pounds over probably only added to the fire of Witt wanting to finish him. Moving over to Semelsberger, he's coming off that decision win over Carlton Minus, which really hasn't looked great up until this point. Carlton Minus, another bust from Alaskan FC. And you take a look at Semelsberger's record up until this point, and you really could call into question just about everybody. He has a loss in 2018 to a debuting fighter in the third round. And then, going through his record, he has one fight at Cage Fury that he wins it by split decision, and that's against a 2-0 fighter, and that's probably the highest organization he's fought up until this point. 4-2 in Maverick MMA, he gets a win over Chris Gatalo, and then Richard Pasternak, who he beats in the first round with elbows. And if you look at that tape study, man, it's like it makes you think that Semelsberger is a force of nature, but then you look at that guy's record, and he's been KO'd 5 times in the first round. I think Semelsberger tape study is really misleading. And after Jason Witt showed what he can do against UFC caliber talent, I just think that his wrestling will be a little bit too much for Semelsberger, although Semelsberger's athleticism is a little concerning.
Yeah, man, Semelsberger, that was a much closer fight with Carlton Minus than it should have been, and like you said, Minus went on to lose his next one, already cut by the UFC, and another Alaskan FC bust there. With Semelsberger, only 9 fights there, but he does have 7 amateur fights, and one of those is a loss against William Knight, who's in the UFC as well. But Semelsberger, at 28 years old, he is entering the prime of his career here. He's got great size for the welterweight division, and he's got a good right hand and knees that he'll land while he's walking forward, but he keeps a really high guard, and he has a ton of forward pressure that I think you're right. Jason Witt will be able to utilize that wrestling, and that's something I think he's definitely going to rely on here. He's won 5 of his last 6, and maybe thanks to James Krause over there at Gloria MMA has kind of had a second win to his career there for Jason Witt. That last performance, man, he beat the absolute brakes off Cole Williams, busted him up bad with an elbow, but the pace that he put on, it's he was all excited when it was done, but you could tell evidently that's not a pace that this guy could put on for 15 minutes there. So that does worry me. I don't want him to come out and utilize a ground and pound as heavy as he did. I told you earlier, stall a little bit in half guard. You don't have to absolutely, beat the guy up. But he did miss by 5.5 pounds and probably added a little fuel to the fire, like you said. He did open as the slight favorite at -127. They've since flipped, and you can get Jason Witt at plus money. The one reason I was hesitant to bet him, I feel like we haven't, really seen what he can be, or the true version of him. Like you said, taking it on a day notice, flying to Vegas, medical's not coming back on time, bumping you up to the main card, and then getting KO'd in the first round there, and then you get a guy who misses by 5.5 pounds with no cardio that you're able to just basically manhandle here. So I don't know the Jason Witt that we've seen, but I think I lean toward him, and I'm very interested in betting this fight. I think I just need a little more push, maybe a little more tape study, but I definitely lean toward Jason Witt, if he can use the wrestling.
And we do kind of lean towards this one to find a spot on this card, because there are a lot of fights on this card that we just don't agree on. So we're trying to pick these spots, and if we both lean Witt and we can get him at plus money, I think it's the right bet. Although we do think that this isn't just a clear-cut victory for Witt.
For sure. We move on, man, to our women's strawweight division, where we see Gloria de Paula, who is 4-2, take on Jinh Frey, who is 9-6. Gloria de Paula is looking to pick up where she left off there on the Contender Series win, where she was leaps and bounds above, talent-wise, above her opponent there. But even in that fight and outside of that fight, she's not really followed that stellar of competition. It is something to note that she fights out of Shoot Box Brazil with her girlfriend there, and Mayra Buena Silva, who just fought a couple weeks ago. And it's nice to see, that she lives that lifestyle probably day in and day out with someone else who, she's dating there. But super, super green, man. Other than she throws hard like her girl does, her tall Muay Thai stance, but she doesn't move her head, accepts being on her back. They're pretty similar to one another. You move on to Jinh Frey, who, I question it a little bit, and I don't. I understand that the UFC is always like your main goal as a fighter to get to. But when you're the Invicta atomweight champ and the UFC doesn't even have your weight class, I kind of question the move. But then I don't, because at 35, when you retire, you can't leave that on the table. It's a lot of regrets that you leave there. So I understand her making the move despite the UFC really having a true weight class for her. I've actually faded Jinh Frey in her previous two. I bet the Kay Hansen sub prop, which was a little sweaty, I'm not going to lie. She finally got her down in the third round and cashed that. And then we did play Loma for the podcast there. She kind of has a bullies type of style that goes kind of good with girls her weight, but she struggles against young girls who are much bigger than her. And although she's green, I think Gloria de Paula is that girl. So I will side here. I think you got a little different take here.
Yeah, I definitely don't see it the same way. Jinh Frey, she really hasn't delivered in her last four bouts. And you touched on the two girls that she's lost to. They're not necessarily the bigger girls of the division. Kay Hansen, I'm almost positive, is like 5'2" or 5'3", and then Loma, she's 5'1", and those are two girls that Jinh Frey couldn't utilize her game plan against. I mean, towards the end of that Loma fight, it looks like she did start to use a grappling heavy attack and was able to have some success getting it to the ground, but it was too little too late. And so I really do hope and think that Frey is going to use a grappling heavy attack here in the Gloria fight. You touched on Gloria's strength of schedule. I mean, probably the weakest strength of schedule I've ever seen of a debuting fighter in the UFC. And she's willing to stand and trade. And, I think that there are some big holes in her game. One thing that I did note was that she does have an incredible chin, and that's probably a good thing if you're willing to stand in the pocket and throw down. But I do think that she's going to have her hands full with the two-time Invicta atomweight champion. I just think that the experience of Frey is going to be a little bit too much for this debuting fighter. And we are going to see a girl who, in Frey, who utilizes that grappling attack early because she realized that she started it too late in that Loma fight for it to make a difference. Yeah, and the odds makers opened it a whole lot closer. The public has, absolutely steamed Gloria de Paula up to almost a 2-1 favorite. I understand keeping the bookies a little honest there if you can get Jinh Frey if that price continues to creep up. It's a close girls fight. We're probably going to lay off, especially if we disagree here, but one of a few disagreements going forward. Yeah, and one other thing to note, in Gloria's last 3 times that she's been to decision, she's lost 2 of them, and Jinh Frey's a fighter who's been 5 rounds multiple times. I do think that Jinh Frey, just fight IQ and experience, will be the determining factor in this one. Moving on, we go to the bantamweight division where we see Jonathan Martinez, who's 13-3, taking on dangerous Davey Grant, who's 10-4. Davey Grant, at this point in his career, he's fighting at about 1 time a year, and it's a little bit concerning at age 35 years old. On the flip side, in his last time out against Martin Day last year, it's probably the best he's ever looked. He put on a show for us and ended up getting the finish in round 3 in a very competitive fight. It definitely wasn't one-sided by any means. You look over Grant's record and you can definitely see he's not the most consistent fighter, and it would be tough backing him if it weren't for the odds that we're getting right now. Jonathan Martinez, he's 2-1 in his last 3 fights and was the underdog in 2 of those 3. And now he's sitting at a 3-1 favorite against Davey Grant. And I just don't understand where the confidence is coming from. He's on a 2-fight win streak against a 40-year-old and Frankie Sands and Thomas Almeida, who's 1-4 in his last 5. I just don't see, like I said, where the confidence is coming from. Jonathan Martinez, in my opinion, has shown that he bites on feints a whole lot. He has shown a measured attack, and he doesn't really overextend himself, which is definitely a positive. But I do think that his biting on feints will eventually get him in trouble. I think Davey Grant's live for the TKO at plus 700 here. I capped Davey Grant at a plus 180. So I do think that Jonathan Martinez is the A side here. But Grant opening at a plus 151 and getting, in my opinion, disrespected at this point, all the way up to a plus 250. I think anything over, like I said, plus 180 is playable.
Yeah, we see this fight just a little bit different here. Jonathan Martinez, I see this guy improving. It's like a little bit of a slow climb through the division. The UFC's done him a little bit of favors as far as matching him up. And then, kind of then a favor again with Thomas Almeida. It's a big name, but then again, a fight that you should probably win, You look at a split decision loss to Yul, something that could have just as easily gone his way. And then the Cirkunov loss, it sucks, but it's a guy on a short notice debut. So I don't want to, dog him too much for that. I definitely see where you're talking about the disrespect here. By no means do I think Jonathan Martinez is ever going to touch the belt. I don't think this guy even cracks the top 15 at any point in time in his career. But the minus 325 that he's sitting at, it is getting a bit out of hand. He's got good cardio. He fights well at his range with a good jab there. He's got good body kicks. And, you got to talk about the knees that he leads with up the middle because it's got him a couple finishes here. On the side of Davey Grant, seeing the biggest line movement of the actual card there against him. So public is really, really counting this 35-year-old out. He's only fought 3 times in 4 years, and it's something, it's something to kind of take note at 35 years old because this guy also owns his own gym. So you really don't expect to see, improvements to really come. Mm-hmm. But you're right. In the Martin Day fight, he took on a much younger guy that brought a power and size advantage, and he looked pretty good. That was the first TKO win in 10 years. I don't want him to fall in love with his striking here and come out to, just strike with Jonathan Martinez. I think Martinez is the younger, faster, more technical of the two. And that's huge at these lower weight classes and stuff. He kind of needs to just stick to his roots here, really kind of mix in the grappling. He's, seen 8 of his victories come by way of submission. But the guy's also lost 3 of the 4. So it's hard for me to see, ways that Davey Grant that wins this fight. I know you see that he's live. It is definitely a dog or pass situation. It's probably gonna be a pass situation altogether on my side, though.
You talked about you wanting you wanting Grant to kind of mix it up. That is something that he really does well, is he keeps his opponents guessing constantly because they don't know when that takedown is going to be shot. And to touch back on that performance against Martin Day, he's setting personal records in strikes specifically at 35 years old, and that's really what I want to see at this point in his career. He definitely doesn't need to be declining at all. So there's only positives on Grant's side, in my opinion. And then Jonathan Martinez taking that last fight against Almeida at 145. I know that he has trouble cutting that weight. So I am curious to see, especially after the weight cut, just how these guys match up. And if Martinez shows any signs of bad weight cut, I'll double down on Davey Grant. Like I said, it's not that I'm making him the A side here. I just think that there is so much value on him.
For sure. We take a step up to our featherweight division where we see a fight between Charles Jourdain taking on Marcelo Rojo, who is 16-6. Jourdain, one of the better Canadian prospects that they have. He's the former TKO champion, which is probably Canada's biggest promotion there. He takes his shot at the UFC, on short notice and up a weight class against Desmond Green. And then in his second fight, they give the guy Du Hoi Choi, who's known for his fight with Cub Swanson. Like a plus 300 dog, comes out, finishes him. And then they give him Andre Fili, which he makes a really, really close fight, ends up dropping Fili at one point himself. So at 25 years old, the UFC has not really done this guy any favors. Until the last fight, they give him this Kulabau guy, which is supposed to be a layup. he throws one of his spinning attacks and gets countered, and the nose gets shattered round one. All of a sudden, this fight becomes, much closer than it should be, resulting in a draw there. But with Jourdain, you can't take your eyes off the TV for a second. This guy throws flying knees, spinning back fist, all kind of stuff. He's got 100% finish right there. And the way to beat this guy is really to wrestle him. You saw Desmond Green and Thiele really have some success with that. But he's taken, another step down. And at 25 years old, Marcelo Rojo is the competition level that Charles Jourdain probably needs to be fighting at this point in his career. Marcelo was supposed to take the, a fight a couple weeks ago where his opponent fell off. So, itching to make that UFC debut, but now doing it up a weight class. And he's won 8 of his last 10 fights on the feet, man. Maybe just as entertaining as Jourdain. He offers great knees up the middle, good combinations. But 4 of this guy's losses come by submission. So, he does have a weak side there, but Charles Jourdain, not really known to grapple guys. I feel like this is going to be, an exciting fight on the feet for a while it lasts. I know we don't think it sees the judges. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking is probably going to be the fight of the night here. Charles Jourdain, definitely not scared to take those big fights. We've seen him step up. And as you mentioned, that Du Hoi Choi fight, he comes in at the plus 300 dog there and gets it done. One thing I will say, and I don't know if you said this exactly, but he plays down to his competition. And it's not something that you like to see. Here in Marcelo Rojo, you touched on it being up a weight class and short notice, both things that don't work in his favor. And then you take a look at his featherweight record where he's 1-3. That really doesn't make you want to bet him either. Charles Jourdain, he's live as could be, but I do think that he could be your apple pie shitter here, especially if you're putting him in parlays. Like I said, he plays down to his competition, and I just don't think that Rojo is the type of guy that you want to play the game with. He's really good at BJJ, and in his fight, I believe it was the Victor Madrigal fight. His transitioning from sub attempt to sub attempt was insane. Yeah. I think he chained together 4 or 5 different sub attempts.
Which fight you're talking about?
And it was more than impressive to me. And then, like you said, the looping overhands, the knees in the clinch. He really does offer some offensive threats that I think could really give Charles Jourdain some problems. And one other thing to note, if Rojo does win, he does this T-Rex impression at the end of his fight. So be prepared for that. It definitely is going to be off-putting, or you're going to like him for it. I kind of like him for it. I don't think he's going to be able to use it here come Saturday, though. I do lean Jourdain here, although I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah, guys, if you don't know who he is, I know you've seen the highlight clips of any type of YouTube montage, and you'll notice him on Saturday. But we really like the under 2.5 here. It's sitting at a minus 120. Both these guys have finishing capability. Charles Jourdain's never won a fight other than anyway by finish.
And when he smells that finish, he really goes all out to get it, and that can be a bad thing for him. He kind of leaves himself exposed when he does smell blood, and that's been his downfall in the past before as well. So
I know we like that under 2.5, and probably going to be one of the official plays we released this week.
Back to the bantamweight division, we have Yahya, who's 26-10-1, taking on the judge Ray Rodriguez, who's 16-7. Yahya, he's gone 11-4-1 in his UFC career, but coming off the draw to Enrique Barzola and the loss to Simone, you kind of have to wonder if the 36-year-old age is catching up, and especially at the 135-pound weight class where speed is everything. It definitely makes you question. Yahya, as far as when you're facing him, he's good enough on the ground that the ultimate goal when fighting Yahya is to keep it on the feet. Yahya is the type of fighter where even if he doesn't complete the takedown, if he can get you up against the fence, he'll go for the heel hook, he'll pull guard, go for an Imanari roll, anything to get it to the ground. And that's where Ray Rodriguez has really shown some holes in his game. He's coming off his debut loss against Brian Kelleher where he was subbed. But then you look at any of the times where he's faced, UFC caliber competition. Brian Kelleher, he gets subbed. Tony Gravely, he gets ground and pounded in round 3. Chris Gutierrez, the rear naked choke in round 1. He's just shown shitty takedown defense in all of his fights. And one that I really like to point out is the Andy Perez fight. I watched that one. Ray Rodriguez had a lot of success chopping at the legs early and had Andy Perez on one leg, and Perez was still able to secure multiple takedowns. and it just completely left a bad taste in my mouth about Ray Rodriguez. So I've got Rani Yahya here pretty hard. I'm playing him inside the distance by sub and round 1. Although I do think that at minus 300, he's a good parlay piece too.
For sure, man. Hani's been a pro since 2002. This is one of the lone WEC guys that we got still left in the UFC. I'm not sure the number that you just said, but 17th, 18th UFC walk, something like that he's making on Saturday. But kind of like Davey Grant, got a bit inactive as he's gotten a little bit older. He's only had one fight in 2018, 2019, and then another year since we've seen him fight Enrique Barzola there. He's an absolute stud on the mat. He's an ADCC world champion. He's got 20 wins by submissions, and he averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's coming off the loss and the draw there to Simone and Barzola, but those are really, really good young wrestlers who we've also seen fight up a weight class at 145. And that is a nightmare for an older jiu-jitsu guy, especially one who, a little bit like Hani, he's not good at shooting on the outside. He'll pull guard, like you said, desperation attempts to get it, but he's not a strict wrestler. Outside open areas of the mat, he's not that good at, at securing the takedown there. And he's also extremely wild on the feet. And, we've seen Simone drop him a few times, and we just really kind of seen the punches take effect as he's flopped on his back, and it just looks like it's out of desperation. And come round 3, the cardio it looks terrible. There's no other words for it. On the side of Ray Rodriguez, though, actually last fight against Kelleher took it short notice to replace the previously talked about Ricky Simone there. And it's like, do you watch tape at all? Because, how does Brian Kelleher beat everybody?
Gilly.
It's just like a sloppy shot. And, this guy's bounced around. He's 33 himself. He's bounced around at 35, 45. You touched on a couple good names outside and, Chris Gutierrez. He's also fought in Steven Peterson. He knocked out Jimmy Flick, but that's a flyweight.
Mm-hmm.
At 135, though, he does present good size, and, he'll bite down on the mouthpiece and throw with Yanni, and that makes me, a little worried there. He's more dangerous on the feet, but Yanni is an absolute terror on the mat, and he's got an easy path to victory if he wants to take that on Saturday. But they leave this on the feet, man. It's more of a coin flip here. I'd like Yanni to stick to his roots here and just use his major grappling pedigree that he's got to make this an easy dub for him on Saturday.
Yeah, I like it.
We move on to Courtney Casey, who is 9-8, taking on JJ Aldrich, who is 8-4. Takes place in the women's flyweight division, man. I probably won't spend too much time on this one. It's one of the, least exciting bouts we have here on Saturday. Casey has alternated, wins and losses here into superstition. She's due a win here. When you look at this girl's resume, win or loss, she has without a doubt been in the, in the octagon with far superior girls than JJ Aldrich has. And a couple split decisions go her way. Careers may be in a different place there. Both these girls, they're ex-straw weights, but without a doubt, looking at the two of them, you can easily see Courtney Casey as the bigger, more physical of the two. And despite, her biggest knock being her takedown defense, she actually does mix into wrestling a little bit herself. She is the girlfriend, fiance of Drakkar Klose, which is nice to see again because, she's living that fighter lifestyle day in and day out. But with Drakkar Klose's situation right now, leaving them in May Lab and stuff, even checking Casey's Instagram there, she's training with Drakkar and a couple other guys, and that's really about it. So definitely hurting her training camp here, where JJ Aldrich trains out of one of the better gyms, and going right now that they're in Denver with Team Elevation. Mm-hmm. Fantastic girls on the mat. The list could go on and on there. She shows great cardio, and out the gate, she is a fast starter. She'll blitz you. She'll land that left hand that she loves. She's coming off a year layoff, and at 28 years old, you like to think improvements are still being made, especially out of a really good gym. What this girl I don't really like about her, though, in the Macy Barber fight, she wasn't able to get that finish even after dropping Macy Barber, and I felt like her confidence was broken easily once Macy was able to kind of bully her a little bit and kind of show her that she was an ex-flyweight. And like I said, although Courtney Casey being an ex-flyweight herself, I think she's going to have the more physical advantages in this fight, just be the stronger girl. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet because the gym really worries me here. But I think we disagree here, man, because I lean Courtney Casey here.
Yeah, this is the battle of the 125 gatekeepers. Courtney Casey does a really good job of making fights extremely close. And like you said, her biggest kryptonite has been her takedown defense. From what I can tell, Courtney Casey has been bailed out by a couple of armbar and guards.
Typical women's finish.
Typical women's finish. And just nothing about her resume impresses me. Even the split decision win over Angela Hill, that happens to Angela Hill, you know. JJ Aldrich, like you said, southpaw with that solid straight left that really made Macy Barber pay. And when I look down the line of the girls that she's beaten, the Macy Barber loss, like you said, she was winning that fight and touching her up. Beat Pollyanna Viana, who's really turned her career around. The Danielle Taylor, she's small for the division, but she's a powerful girl, and to beat her, I think is what you have to be in the UFC, right? And then in her last time out with Sabina Mazo, that's a tough girl to go out there and get a split decision with.
Fight at bantamweight,
right? And so I really do think that the upside here is JJ Aldrich. You know, like you said, at 28 years old, she really does look to be the one that's progressing, where Courtney Casey has seemed to plateau at 33 years of age. I think JJ Aldrich is the play here. And if this fight stays on the feed, I don't think Courtney Casey's striking is good enough to compete with JJ Aldrich's crisp boxing.
Yeah, just another fight here that we disagree on, but you know, it's another one of these women's flyweight, strawweight fights.
It's a coin flip, more or less.
It's more the coin flip.
Kicking off our main card, we go to the middleweight division, where we see your boy Eryk Anders, who's 13-5, take on the dentist Darren Stewart, who's 12-6. This fight was rescheduled after Eryk Anders had weight cutting issues, which is definitely concerning. You know, that's the first thing that I noticed here at 33 years old. I know that he's talked before in the past that cut to 185 is just difficult, and it's not going to get any easier as he ages. I know recently he's been at Fight Ready MMA, getting a lot of work in with Eddie Cha. I expect him to make some improvements, but something that I don't love is that since Eryk Anders got that knockout against Vinicius Moreira, he's kind of fell in love with the striking and not looked great at it. You know, He kind of, in my opinion, he got outstruck in the Meerschaert fight, then tried to do some takedowns against Krzysztof Jotko, but went 0 for 5 in them. Then Darren Stewart, again, it's another guy I'm just not too impressed with. Yeah. If you go down his wins, they're only wins that he absolutely needed to get to stay in the UFC. Yeah. Eric Spicely, Charles Byrd, Bevon Lewis, Darren Wynn, and Maki Patola are all guys who are cut or bound to get cut. And his losses, it's, you know, nobody who's upper echelon. Even Edmund Shabazian, we've kind of seen, just isn't going to break, in my opinion, right now, is not ready to break that top 10. This fight seems a little bit of a trap. I know that we don't agree on this at all, but the play I've been liking is the under 2.5 at plus 185. In my head, I think if I were to blindly bet 185ers at, you know, near 2-1 odds for the under, I would consistently come out on top. Even though these are guys who have both shown to be seeing the judges more than usual, they both have roughly a 70% finish rate, which makes me confident in betting that under, even though I get that we don't see eye to eye, and I definitely understand not wanting to bet the under.
Yeah, Eryk Anders, man, it's a definition of athlete turned fighter there. You know, he was on the national championship winning team for Alabama, actually led the team in tackles that night. But you know, the UFC, they really thought they had a star on their hands with Eryk Anders there. He come out of LFA, and he looked phenomenal in the fight with Brendan Allen. They give him, I think it was Rafael Natal in his debut, and he knocks him across the octagon, you know. And then here comes the step up in competition, and he gets life-changing beatings from both Roundtree and Santos. And, I mean, even in the Machida and Theodoro, he's so gun-shy to throw, you know. So give him the step down again in Vinicius Moreira, who is everybody is supposed to be, and he does exactly what you want him to do. We got our star back, knock out GM3 for us, and we were there live. He didn't win that fight.
No, we did not.
You know, he's now lost 4 of his last 6. The cardio has really kind of been an issue. He's kind of shown poor fight IQ as well. But I don't like shitting on him because, you know, he's a fan favorite. He's one of our favorite, man. We like watching this guy fight. He started to mix in his wrestling really well. He's got a powerful left hand, and in the Jotko fight, he ended a lot of his combinations with good kicks. And on Darren Stewart, man. Cage Warriors tried to sell us a undefeated light heavyweight that was going to come in and make some waves, and drops down to 185, starts off with a no contest, followed by 3 losses, getting submitted in 2 of those. Really, just exposing the holes that Darren Stewart has in his game there. I like to think, though, they are wins that he needed to be, to stay and keep his job in the UFC. But I think we've started to see him kind of make improvements on his skill set. Bavon Lewis, trained out of Albuquerque, supposed to be long like John Jones and stuff, supposed to be a good prospect, and turns him down. And then DC's boy with Jourdain Win, turned him back. And we saw him just beat Arroyo, who everybody was all over. He throws in combination. Hard leg kicks, good power, man. And, he just got his first submission win against Maki Patola. Nothing really to, write home about. But you see this guy improving, I think, in my opinion, is what I'm trying to get at there. And I can't fault him for the losses to Shabazian. I can't loss him for the loss to Holland. And he made them both split decisions, a lot closer than people thought they were going to be. He lost to Bartosz Fabinski. A big-time grappler again, though, and if something to note, that's when he moved to Cage Warriors. That was the very first fight ever affected by coronavirus, just weird circumstances. So, I might give him a pass there as well. So, I think Darren Stewart probably gets this fight done. You can take him from a minus 175, minus 180 favorite to a plus 130 by decision. I think this fight sees the over. We've never seen Eryk Anders finish other than the time he straight up basically quit against Thiago Santos. And then we've only seen Stewart submitted twice. Both these guys have proven to me that they have durability. I like the over 2.5. No, we don't see eye to eye, but I do get your philosophy about seeing these big guys at at such plus money for unders. I do feel like in the long run, you might come out profitable, but this is one that I just have a hard time seeing.
And let me just say one more thing about this fight, why I do think it sees the under. Anders really had a hard time when he does have to use a grappling heavy attack. He gasses really bad, and that's why he quit in that Thiago Santos fight. Darren Stewart's one of those guys who will walk forward and force that pressure on you and really look to grind you up and make you work against that cage, which, like I said, that Anders weight cut, I really do think is going to be the issue, and that's kind of the angle I've convinced myself why this should be the under.
And I see it, man. Taking a couple steps down in the weight classes here, we go to our flyweight division where we have Manel Kape, who is 15-5, taking on Matheus Nicolau, who is 15-3-1. Manel Kape there is looking for a quick turnaround after an unsuccessful debut, but I can't fault the guy. He fought Alexander Pantoja, who has proven time and time again he's a number one flyweight, or not a number one, a top flyweight in the world, the number one seed on the Ultimate Fighter his season. And Kape was also on a year layoff coming into that. He's a guy that I was anticipating his debut for a while, because if you decide to keep this division around, Manel Kape is one of the better flyweights that's outside the UFC that I thought needed to be signed. He was the Risen champ. But there was a couple things that, with Risen, you got to note that I think added, to his 1 year layoff, and just the fact that I thought he was looking a little nervous, just didn't look like himself. He always chose to wear shoes when he was in Risen. Yeah. Risen also fights in the ring and not an octagon. So that just, that adds something to his already weakness of being his takedown. He now has to worry about getting taken down against the cage. He just looked a little nervous and a shell of himself against Pantoja. But on the feet, he's super athletic, a ton of movement. He's got good feints and ability to switch stances. On Nicolau's side, he's making that UFC return where he got cut when that division was kind of up in the air. The guy was 3-0 and then gets cut off of his very first loss. And it kind of seems like a mistake now, since the UFC just sold us 2 flyweight pay-per-views back-to-back with Davis and Figueiredo. It definitely seems like the division is here to stay, and I'm glad we got this guy back. He's got 2 wins since, getting cut, and he trains out of Novi now there with Aldo and some others. But again, like Kape, he has a big layoff right here, and he's coming back to a smaller octagon, so that's something to note as well for him. Man, both of these flyweights are very willing to throw down, and they have the under sitting at plus 105. That's something that I'm really considering. The only drawback is that it's flyweights here. this is a fun fight, and I do lean toward Manel Kape to probably get it done.
Yeah, so this is one that I'm happy we do both agree on. Kape here, looking at his Instagram, he's noted that he's been doing some hard sparring at the UFC PI with, Javier Mendez's team with Islam and Khabib. And I really do think, as we saw in the Alexander Pantoja fight, he started using the grappling attack later on in the fight where it was just a little bit too late, but he had a lot of success when he went to it, and it looked really impressive. And I think one thing that I noted about Kape is that he's been in 5-round fights multiple times, and I feel like he's still in that mode. And one thing that you see, if you look at his last 5, he has 3 second-round finishes, and that's a pattern that I think will continue in this fight. One thing that he does really well is he downloads information in that first round and really looks for the hole, similarly to John Jones or to Israel Adesanya. He's just taking that first round off and really looking for his shots, even though he keeps that first round close. So I think that this is another one where he'll, be able to download Nicolau's problems on the feet and eventually exploit them in the second round. Nicolau, one thing working in his favor, if Kape does decide to try and take this down, Nicolau has 100% takedown defense in the UFC, and that'll be something that Kape, I'm really interested to see if he can overcome that, just because he has looked successful against Pantoja, but Pantoja's somewhat willing to go onto his back, being a BJJ specialist. So this is a great matchup, and it did open at pick'em odds. We've seen the line moving towards Kape's favor, and I think rightfully so. And sitting at anywhere under a -150, I think it's playable range, one that I hope that we can jump on. And if we can find a decent enough line to get Kape inside the distance, I think that he'll figure out Nicolau before the judges are called into it.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I think Manel Kape takes this one. I'm glad we finally found a spot again that we can agree on, and there's a good spot for us to bet.
Cool. Moving on, we go to our women's strawweight division with Angela Overkill Hill, who's 12-9, taking on the Spider Monkey Ashley Yoder, who's 8-6. No secret that Angela Hill is not a favorite fighter of mine. I think she complains about a lot of the fights that she chooses to make close. That being said, I don't think that her record's a good reflection of her skill set. She's definitely progressed even in her old age over the last few years, and really one of the most active fighters on the roster, putting in four fights in 2020. Definitely the cage time and momentum is in her favor. Not necessarily that those fights are going her way,
right,
but she definitely has been more active inside the cage, where Yoder, it's not like she's been taking time off. She also has 2 fights in 2020. And really looked good in her last time out against Miranda Granger, where we saw her kind of use a grappling heavy attack, and something that we haven't seen from Yoder in the past. When this fight was rebooked, Yoder had put up a couple of pictures of her weight cut, and although she did have to bring out the curtain to get the weight cut done, she looked in incredible shape. And when this line first opened, it was a +150 for Ashley Yoder, and now this time out, it's like
+295.
Yeah, opened up at a +295, and I think that's fair. Like, I think Angela Hill is the A side to this, but I think Yoder is kind of getting disrespected, and the fact that Angela Hill relies on the judges to either get her a win or a loss makes me want to stay away from her so badly, and just play Yoder by decision, because that's how she's going to get it done at +500 or better.
Yeah, this is it's a rematch from 2017, and it was actually rescheduled for 2 weeks ago. There we saw as a cornerman for Yoder test positive, so nothing on Yoder's case as far as having to worry about much. But didn't really ask for this rematch. I don't really think anybody did there. And yes, Angel Hill is probably the A side, but it is really hard not to take a stab on Ashley Yoder. She's definitely getting disrespected. The first time around, -175 for Angela Hill, gets stormed all the way to a -350. This time, the bookies open it up at a -360. They're not stupid. They're not letting anybody make money out here. Angela Hill, you talked about the record, because it's not a good reflection of her physical skills, because this girl's fought really good competition, and she's coming off losses to Michelle Waterson, Claudia Gadelia, both very, very close fights. bitches about it quite a bit, like you said there. She's a super athletic girl that relies on her movement and her Muay Thai experience on the feet to really get this done. She has great volume, and although her wrestling's decent, it's definitely been the hole in her game, and definitely I think the way Ashley makes this fight close. She had 2 or 3 takedowns in the first fight, making it a little bit closer than it should have been. She trains out of Team Quest there in Vegas. I think she's still making improvements, man, and she looked good against the prospect and Miranda Granger. The key is just going to be for Ashley Yoder if she can mix in the takedowns to make this fight close. Without a doubt, this sees the judges. Ashley Yoder by decision plus 500. That's a play, but I'm almost tempted to just play Yoder at plus 300 as she's already such a big dog. As it creeps closer to fight night, you might even get a little better. That's a big dog that I don't mind dropping 0.3 units on to make a unit there.
It's another one of those with Yoder where you can't underestimate the power of a high yaw in a women's decision. And I mean that. Angela Hill and that Michelle Watterson, she probably was about 3 high yaws back from beating Watterson. And I do think that Yoder, if she does keep it on the feet, that'll work in her advantage as well. Just the fact that Yoder does have a couple of paths to victory, even though I think we both agree Angela Hill is the better fighter here, it's just disrespectful odds at this point.
And not to mention, you can't disregard the fact that Yoder's going to have like a 4-inch height advantage, a 4-inch reach advantage or something as well. So she's physically going to be the much bigger girl. Now I know Angela Hill has already beat her, but both these girls are at different points now in their career. Yoder can make it a lot closer this time around.
I like that we're both on her.
Mm-hmm. And man, moving on to the sleeper fight of the night right here. We have the number 9 ranked featherweight in Dynamite Dan Ige 50K Dan Ige, who's 14-3, taking on Gavin Tucker, who is 13-1. And Dan Ige risking his spot here to an unranked fighter. Ige kind of stormed the division a little bit and then found himself in over his head against Calvin Kattar. Before then, though, it was 6 wins in a row with a couple splits, that I rightfully think the Bektik one, went his way. We were there in Houston to see that one. The Barboza one, maybe a little generous. I'm a bit salty as I did bet Barboza there, but I think most people do think Barboza probably took that one. Ige trains out of Extreme Couture, and he has got good cardio. He's got great sharp boxing, and this guy mixes his wrestling up very well and has quite a bit of submission wins. He has twice the output, averaging strikes per minute than Tucker does there. And, you could say the same for Tucker, but Ige, he struggled to guys who are much taller than him, and Julio Arce and Calvin Kattar. And it's just, it's not the case here. When Gavin Tucker, damn it, hopefully the third time's the charm, because I've faded this guy the past 2 times around against both Justin James and Billy Q, and he's made me eat my words. I think we're really starting to maybe see what a consistent Gavin Tucker can be, as he was taking multiple layoffs between those other fights. Mm-hmm. Now we've seen him fight 3 times in the last 7 months, and I think that's a byproduct of consistency. Gavin Tucker, like I said, made me eat my words in that Billy Q fight. He was countering him so well. I mean, anytime Billy Q stepped forward, Gavin Tucker threw something at him and made him take some damage. He was great at getting those double underhooks to secure the takedowns there. He's a BJJ black belt himself, and, to Rick Glenn, he's taken an ass whooping himself and shown great durability. So I do see this fight probably going to decision. I just think Dan Ige is the better fighter here. I've been monitoring the line and stuff. It seems to be, kind of sticking, where it is. I think we got minus 120, minus 122. I think we're going to play Ige here, man.
Yeah, 100%. In my opinion, unless your name ends with Holloway, I don't usually back Hawaiians, but Ige is an exception here. Yeah. Like you said, I don't think that I think that he's just a little bit better all around. He's willing to sit down and trade in the pocket and has that Hawaiian chin to match. Really crisp boxing and high guard, where Gavin Tucker, he's clean and powerful on the feet, but this is easily his biggest test to date with Dan Ige. And I do think that Ige is just going to be a step ahead of him in just about everywhere. Tucker, he's really good at circling out whenever fighters pressure him, and that's something that will work into his favor, where Dan Ige can be a little bit flat-footed and just kind of sit there and want to trade. I don't think that Tucker's going to allow him to do that. But one thing that Dan Ige does really, really good is keeping his opponent honest by mixing up takedowns, and he has really good timing. So if Gavin Tucker does try and commit on some of those punches, I could see Dan Ige slipping under those and securing some takedowns to end up edging out rounds. Like you said, Gavin Tucker, he's never been finished, and Dan Ige has a hell of a chin.
Yeah.
I see this one hitting the over. I don't think that there's any value on it. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I doubt that there's value on the over here.
Yeah, it's sitting at minus 265 for over 2.5.
Hard to play that at all. So I do think that Dan Ige at 29 years, I was super surprised to see that, by the way. Whenever I saw this, I thought Gavin Tucker, I thought that these ages would be flipped. Yeah. But we see Dan Ige at under 30 years old right now, still making improvements in his game. And Gavin Tucker kind of getting a late start in the UFC at 34 years old, which is definitely concerning because I don't think that he has a better skill set than Dan Ige here. And Ige's only going to get better, especially working at Extreme Couture right now. Easy pick for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've also not only have I played Ige, he's got a couple submission wins on his resume. And we saw Gavin Tucker have to take the pants off to get out of the arm triangle from Justin James. It's sitting at plus 800 for Dan Ige. And although I do see the fight going over, I think that's a small stab that I'm willing to take just myself a $5 play on or something like that.
Yeah, sure. I like that. Moving on to our co-main event, we go to the light heavyweight division where we see Misha Cirkunov, who's 15-5, taking on Ryan Superman Spann, who's 18-6. Cirkunov's coming off a 1.5-year layoff since his win over Jimmy Crute in 2019. And since that 1.5-year layoff, I know he spent a little bit of time over at City Kickboxing improving that stand-up game, which is something I really like to see considering he already has that solid base in his grappling. This fight was postponed for about 3 months from an undisclosed injury that Cirkunov had. That's definitely concerning. I mean, I wish I would know a little bit more about it.
3 months isn't that too long, so it can't be too serious.
Right. You got to think that
probably some pulled muscle or something.
But even that, you would think that somebody would still take that fight if it was something minuscule, right? Cirkunov, he fights from southpaw, and he does have some decent stand-up, although in his last fight, especially against Jimmy Crute, he had said openly that he wanted to get back to his roots, and he did exactly that, taking it to the ground and really having his way with Jimmy Crute. There were a couple of scramble situations, but none of them where Misha didn't wind up in the dominant position. And Ryan Spann, I compared him to the Kennedy and Zek Chawu who we saw last week, where it's
trains with him.
Yeah, trains with him out of Fortis MMA. You've got all the physical gifts you could possibly ask for as 6'5" with an 80+ inch reach, but just not coming together. The way they're putting it together, even though Kennedy got the win last weekend, I'm looking for spots to fade him next time he comes out. Ryan Spann, just one of those guys where he doesn't show me like a ton of knockout power. He has one knockout in the UFC, and it was to little nog. It's gonna happen. And then in that Johnny Walker fight, is one of the ones that I called, but I did say that Spann spends a lot of time wasting,
just stalling,
kind of trying to get that takedown, and it makes it for a boring fight. Where Cirkunov is definitely in and out of there as quickly as possible. I think. As I look at it, in his past 6, they're all him winning or losing in the first round, and definitely a spot where we're looking at the under, I think.
Yeah, man, this is a fun fight for me. Misha Cirkunov is coming off a win over Jim Crute. It was a guy that I'm really, really high on. That's a promising prospect at 205, and a guy that I think I'd take over Ryan Spann if they were to get matched up. Misha shot the double leg. It had to be under 5 seconds, I swear. And it's kind of, I'm glad that he got back to his roots. This guy averages over 5 takedowns in 15 minutes. There's no shocker to what his skill set is here. And that's what you got to do with these young prospects who are much powerful and, much faster than you on the feet. You got to stick to your roots there. He's won his last 5 by submission. He's extremely heavy when he gets on top of you. And if Cirkunov were to get on top and mount Spann, he's in a world of shit, man. On the side of Misha Cirkunov, he's fought a lot better competition as well, inside the UFC, outside of maybe Patrick Cummings, who I think, has proven, he's a UFC level competition. Outside of that, this is easily Cirkunov's easiest UFC, opponent to date. Other losses being to Glover, who's about to fight for the belt next, and Ozdemir, who is, an ex-title challenger himself.
And in that first round, dangerous to anybody.
For sure. And I mean, in the Johnny Walker fight, Spann lost to him as well, just, a wild Johnny Walker technique.
Mm-hmm.
But Spann, he's a guy that the UFC has just wanted for a long time. They gave him his first Contender Series shot after he lost 4 of his last 6 fights. And he gets finished by a middleweight in Carl Roberson there. Trevin Giles, also a UFC middleweight, finished him beat him in LFA. He did make good of his second opportunity on the Contender Series, and then it's just, cherry-picked opponents. Luis Enrique lost his previous 2. Little Nog lost 3 of the previous 5. Sam Alvey lost the 3 previous before stepping in there with Spann, and he looked like shit in that Sam Alvey fight. He had Sam Alvey on the cage the entire time, but got countered anytime he stepped in there. And he was just, gun shy. You talked about it because he's got all the physical tools in the world and trains out of a great camp. But in fighting, man, sometimes athleticism just doesn't get the job done, and it doesn't make you a better fighter. I know we see a lot of holes in Spann's game, but also, Misha has his share of, holes too. The fight not going to decision doesn't have a lot of value. You definitely can't play that straight. The under 2.5 is sitting at minus 280. And if you want any type of value, it's definitely something that you're going to have to parlay. Something that I actually did already parlay with someone later on the card. No shocker, Leon Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think the under is very likely to hit here. Spann's got power. Misha's got the huge advantage on the mat here, and it's tailor-made for it for a nice co-main event.
And I just want to clarify that I definitely am on the Misha side. I think that's a play I'm looking to play, and maybe one that we can come to an agreement with. I know that we're still looking to, definitely see how they match up, especially physically. I'd like to see how they face off. But if the Misha Cirkunov line stays where it is, I'll definitely be making a play on that.
For sure, man. We move on to the main event of the evening, where we have Leon Edwards, who is 18-3, taking on Belal Muhammad, who is also 18-3. Man, we haven't seen Leon Edwards since July of 2019 when he beat RDA. Sort of a special moment for me. That was the first podcast I ever did by myself. Super pumped about it. Hung out with the guys that night, and the first 9 fights go to decision. It's somewhat of a shitty night, and it's capped off by Leon Edwards, of course, taking the fight to decision himself. This guy complains just about as much as Angela Hill there. This guy's had 3 finishes in his 12 UFC fights. And, he's avoided every big fight. He won't fight Wonderboy. He won't fight Colby. Masvidal straight up, sucker punches you backstage, and you still won't fight him. And they got to bully you and take you out of the rankings in order for you to fight Kamsat. It's just Leon is not a guy that I back as far as being a fan favorite for me. He talks about, I think he's proven himself to be a top contender, but, Gunnar Nelson and 2X lightweights and Cerrone and RDA, they don't get you a title shot when you have previous names like Wonderboy, Colby, Burns, Masvidal sitting there. It doesn't, and I don't know how Leon doesn't see it. On the feet, Leon's nasty out of that southpaw. He's got a great 1-2. He always comes in great shape, and that Instagram picture he released, he looks to be in phenomenal shape. The layoff, it is concerning, but to see that he's only 29 years old, it's not really concerning. Belal has fought 3 times, since Leon has, and this will be his first 5-rounder. His cardio is typically his biggest weapon. I don't really see it being an issue. He trains at a Rufus Sport. For me, that's a gym on the decline right now. You've seen Anthony Pettis and stuff kind of move on. They're kind of holding on to Belal and Brandon Allen at the moment, but I think Leon Edwards is so much better on the feet than Belal, man. What do you think?
I think Leon probably has the edge just about everywhere. It's only been 3 weeks since Belal Muhammad's fought, and I noted him saying in the post-fight speech that he could barely walk after round 2, and I don't think that 3 weeks is enough time to get that back. Leon Edwards isn't necessarily known for his low calf kicks, where we saw in the Gunnar Nelson fight, he didn't throw a single one. And then in the RDA fight, he finally started to realize, hey, that's a technique I should incorporate into my arsenal, and started chopping down RDA's legs. Edwards, like you said, if you're just judging by the eye test, looks to be in the best shape of his life, and someone who I think could really make Belal Muhammad struggle. Belal only at 5'11", that's kind of been his Achilles heel is his size. He has a really traditional boxing stance and utilizes his fight IQ and those takedowns at the very end of the round to secure those rounds. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that on Leon Edwards, who has such good distance control and can read those entries from a mile away. He really makes people pay whenever they do shoot for takedowns. Even if it's not a huge shot, they take damage, and it's a cumulative damage over the course of that fight. Both of these guys kind of mirror each other, and I do think that we're in for a staring contest for about 5 rounds, which is why you see the fight goes to decision at minus 180. Kind of disappointing to see for a main event, but it is something I think is, worth taking a stab on, especially considering Belal Muhammad possibly being compromised with his calf. I think Leon Edwards at plus 250 inside the distance, this could be one of those fights where we see Leon Edwards finally get the finish that we know he's capable of, but he just hasn't delivered yet.
Yeah, man. Belal is he's one of those guys he's decent at all aspects, but he does not stand out anywhere. And I think he's really going to be outclassed mainly on the feet here by Leon, who has, great distance control like you talked about. And when he clinches up, he's got a great elbow from clinch that he opened up Cerrone's eye with and stuff. But I go back to, watching Belal fight Alan Yoban, Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal, all really good strikers. And Belal struggled bad. But the fight that I take, the most from is that Jeff Neal fight. Another southpaw with a piston of a left hand, loves his left high kick. The same weapons as Leon, and he torched Belal Muhammad. Mm-hmm. Belal really showed how tough he was there. And I think Leon Edwards, if, ultimately you look at it, he fights very similar to Jeff Neal. He's just a little bit better Jeff Neal. Like I said, I parlayed Leon with the co-main event not going the distance, and you could just about convince me that if anything you parlay with Leon is going to be, a rightful parlay. Belal's, a lot of people think that, fighting a couple weeks ago might be an advantage, but Casey Kenny wore out Alatane, and then you see him take 3 weeks later fighting Nathaniel Wood and, really starts to fade late and stuff. Going 15 hard minutes like that after a long training camp. And turn around having to jump back in when you're not fully healthy. He's definitely going in compromised.
Making the weight cut as well. Yeah. That's going to take a toll on your body. Even if it's an easy weight cut, your body's not supposed to do that consistently. One thing I noted is it's a shame that we don't get to see these fighters both off of full camps, because I really do think Belal Muhammad would be lined a whole lot closer if they were, just because, like I said, their styles do mirror each other so much. One thing about Leon Edwards being a minus 250 or better at this point that's a little bit concerning for me is that he does let the judges decide who wins his fights. And that being the case, we've seen it, our entire time watching UFC, but especially this year, judges aren't on their game right now. And it's not something that I want to bank on. So although I do think Edwards has all the advantages here, it's hard for me to just to lay the minus 260 price tag, and it's much more interesting to see the plus 250 price tag on the inside the distance.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a play we should definitely take a look at taking a stab at.
Cool.
So we didn't cover Ben Rothwell and Felipe Lins. That fight fell off just shortly before starting the podcast, and we did see on Twitter that Nasrat did apparently get himself an opponent. So extra fight that we get to add there. But that does conclude the breakdown of UFC Vegas 21 there. Man, if you had to look through the entire card, as always, is there a fight that stands out to you that you think could be fight of the night?
Pretty easy pick for me right here. I've decided on Charles Jourdain versus Marcelo Rojo. Yeah. I think both these guys are ready to throw down, and that's why we're on the under 2.5. Yeah. I don't know who's going to win, but I definitely think that it's not going to see the judges.
I'm really with you there, man. Jourdain, 100% finish rate. Marcelo Rojo, I think I said, hasn't seen the judges in like the past 10. Definitely going to be a good fight, man. For me, Ige and Tucker, both those boys always bring the heat. Ige and Tucker both have proved that they are very, very durable and can take beatings. I expect this fight to be super, super interesting. I know you saw on Tucker's Instagram as well the cut above his eye and stuff. So I know that's something to note. And Ige always makes the fights dirty. This could be a bloodbath.
Absolute banger. I really do think that it's cool that both the fights that we've chose for fight of the nights we're making plays on. That's something that I really like seeing. If I had to pick a fighter on this card that I'm looking most forward to seing, it's got to be Yahya. I think at 36 years old, he's got a lot of questions he's got to answer. But I do think that he is so much better than Ray Rodriguez here, and I want him to come out, get that first round dub, and prove me right.
I like it, man. For me, it's Manel Kape. It's a guy I was been super high on for a long time, really anticipating that debut that just didn't go as planned. But he had a tall task in front of him there in Pantoja. think he's in a good spot, taking a guy that was in a pretty similar position as him, coming back now to the UFC and stuff. I think we like Manel Kape there as well. So hopefully release a play on him, and it's a fighter I want to keep an eye on for sure.
Cool.
If you were still with us, simple favor to ask there, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps your boys out a lot. And if you haven't, get on over to Apple Music and Spotify. Give us a nice little 5-star review there. Help us out there. And if you're with us, man, I hope this, continues. The trend continues in another positive direction. Trying to get out of that slump of 2021.
Yes, sir.